Coming to you from the wintry city of board gaming, Omaha, Nebraska, welcome to the Out of the Dust podcast. I'm your host, Snow Trooper Bryce. Tied in with the popular recurring Out of the Dust Geek List on Board Game Geek, the Out of the Dust podcast is a bi-weekly podcast that is focused on re-exploring games we play that we hadn't previously played in a year or more. Why did the game get dusty? Why did you decide to dust it off? How does the game compare to how you remembered it? Are you likely to play it more often in the future? These are the questions that we're interested in examining on Out of the Dust. This week on the podcast, episode 59. On the Out of the Dust segment, I'll bring Notre Dame out of the dust, and a contributor will dust off Zombicide. On the reaction segment, I review my 2019 predictions. On the What I've Been Playing segment, I review Minecraft, Builders, and Biomes. On the Obscure Bryce game segment, I review Augsburg 1520. And we wrap up the episode by counting down my top 10 new-to-me games of 2019. I had a chance to bring Steffenfeld's Notre Dame, published by Ravensburger in 2007, out of the dust recently. I last played it 2 years, 2 months, and 8 days ago during one of my Feld Friday marathons at NukeCon. The occasion this time was at a game day hosted by Omaha legend Michelle, which was also attended by my friend Vicky. I always like to teach Vicky a Feld title she hasn't played before when we find ourselves gaming together, so I went with Notre Dame this time. I hadn't previously actually had a chance to try out the 10th anniversary edition with the new person cards yet, and some of them wound up being in this session, which made for a touch of newness to the game for me. But I found myself able to manipulate the person cards really well in this play and take advantage of scoring the center Notre Dame space without anyone else one round, and rack up a personal best high score. All the players really enjoyed the game though. Like Vicky, none of the others had played before either, and found the card drafting card use in the game innovative and interesting, especially considering the game's age. I wasn't planning on ever getting the 10th anniversary edition since I already own the game, but I'm thinking I really need those new person cards. The ones in this dusty play were really cool. Let's see what a contributor brought out of the dust. Murray Fish, username Muzzfish4, brought the modern classic Zombicide out of the dust. Zombicide is a 2012 release from publisher Cool Mini or Not and designer trio Raphael Guitan, Jean-Baptiste Lulien, and Nicolas Rout. Murray last played it 1 year, 10 months, and 4 days ago and currently rates it a 9.7 out of 10. He writes, "It's been a while between plays for Zombicide, mainly due to limited time rather than limited interest. Anyway, with the holidays here and the air choked with bushfire smoke, we're staying indoors to play a lot of games with the family. We played 5 games of Zombicide the other day. The first 3 used the new A35 when Santa came to town scenario. Interestingly, even though Zombicide 2nd edition is funded, Guillotine Games are still publishing scenarios for the 1st edition on their website. A very encouraging sign that there will be ongoing support for the franchise. This one was sent out on Xmas Eve. Anyway, we found this scenario to be impossible and lost quickly all 3 times. Our second play was with another new scenario, A34 Zombicide 101, where again we lost quickly on our first play, but got the win on our second, mainly due to the overpowered ways that cars work in the 1st edition. Hope this is fixed up the second time around. A fun afternoon with the family was had by all, and I am reminded of just how much I have to paint with this game. I have about 18 heroes finished and no zombies. When I get the next 4 done, I'll start on the undead. Thanks for the contribution, Murray. I have not ever actually played Zombicide myself. As an epic campaign game with as much content as it has, I'm actually kind of intimidated to even consider getting into it myself. I am super impressed at your efforts to paint all the minis in this game, though. Good luck with that. Reaction segment time. As you may recall, I made some predictions for 2019 early last year. Since it's January of the new year, now is a good time to review those and see how I did. First, I predicted that Plan B would finally officially announce Century Eastern Wonders Golem Edition. They did that after the release of Century A New World, right when I was expecting. It was amazing to me that leading up to the announcement, there were still so many people who didn't think it was ever going to happen, and took Plan B at their word. I couldn't resist calling some of those people out, including Mike Young of Plan B, who at one time had vehemently denied a continuation of the Golem editions would ever happen. So I'm off to a good start in my predictions, but it will mostly go downhill from here. I speculated that we might hear about 3 new Legacy games. Mice and Mystics, Legendary, and Star Wars. None of those happened, and it looks like Legacy games are becoming less common than they once were, so I wouldn't be confident in renewing those predictions. I made the prediction that Wingspan would wind up being the highest-ranked 2019 game and that Batman Gotham City Chronicles would be the runner-up and finish in the top 100. Well, I was right about the first part of the top 100 prediction. No other 2019 game wound up in the top 100. The runner-up wound up being The Lord of the Rings Journeys to Middle-earth, which sits at 138 currently. Batman, meanwhile, did alright, landing in the top 800, but I firmly believe its legendarily bad rulebook held it back from doing as well as it could have critically. Another prediction was that either Android Netrunner or Race for the Galaxy would be the top 50 game with the biggest ranking drop. Both games wound up only dropping 3 or 4 spots. The biggest dropper over the last year that started in the top 50 appears to have been Kalis, which dropped 7 slots and fell out of the top 50. I'm okay with that one, as Kalis is a game that has fallen in my estimation over the years. My final predictions concerned the top 10. Brass Birmingham did indeed replace Great Western Trail in the top 10, and got all the way up to number 5 in fact. I was wrong about Spirit Island replacing Scythe in the top 10 though. Spirit Island didn't move much at all, though I still think it has a chance in 2020 when the new expansion ships. That's a hint at my 2020 predictions, but I'll make the rest of them in the next episode's reaction segment. This week on the What I've Been Playing segment, I'm going to tell you about Minecraft Builders of Biomes, the new family game from publisher Ravensburger, designer Ulrich Blum, a fairly obscure designer with about a dozen titles to his credit. And if you'll recall last episode's Out of the Duck segment, the highest ranked of which is Grand Cru. As is the case with seemingly all kids, my sons are both huge fans of Minecraft, and when I heard that Ravensburger was making a game based on the IP, I made it a point to check it out at BGG-Con. And it wound up being my surprise of the con. Here's how it works. Each turn, Mart Wallace style, players enact 2 actions from a menu of actions. Players can move their Minecraft character among stacks of tiles, flipping over the top of the stacks where they stop, which thematically represents the world spawning as they explore the landscape. Tiles either represent mobs of monsters, which players can battle with an interesting deck-building mechanic using an item stack of tiles, or building tiles, which display a various type of building built primarily out of a type of resource in a particular type of landscape. Players can also pick up items to add to their combat tile stack and mine resources from a 3-dimensional cube of resource blocks. These resource blocks are used to build the building tiles for the exploration stacks, which are in turn placed on a personal player board, representing the building up of a Minecraft village. Each time a layer of resource cubes are depleted for the mine, a scoring round is triggered. Each scoring round tasks players to construct adjacent buildings of the same type, primarily construction material or terrain type. There's a value ranking order system of each of these types, and each type scores differently. The game ends after the 3rd scoring round, at which point in time the defeated mobs add end-of-game scoring objective points, and the player with the highest point total attains the honor of being the best builder. This was my surprise of the con, because this is a legit hero game. The action selection mechanism is nothing new, but the actions themselves are interesting, and there's a delightful mixture of exploration, resource gathering and building, and combat that wraps up the package together. And there are even some genuinely innovative mechanisms in the game too. The tile-flipping combat mechanism feels fresh and is engaging, way more interesting than the typical rolling dice combat one might usually expect from a game based on an IP. And the resource gathering through mining cubes from a block of cubes, that's innovative too, and creates a wonderful sense of tension as scoring rounds near triggering, and players must constantly weigh whether they have time to build one more building before then, or pursue other endeavors that might benefit them later. I really like this game, so much so that you will recall it made my top 10 of 2019 list last episode. If you're a parent with kids that like Minecraft, you need to go and get this game. You won't be disappointed, and you'll have a blast playing it with them. And if you don't have kids, get it anyway and try it with your regular gaming group. I think you all will be pleasantly surprised with it as well. Obscure Bryce Game segment time. This week on the segment, I'm going to tell you about Augsburg 1520, a 2006 auction game from publishers Alea and Ravensburger. Augsburg is game number 3 in the Alea medium box numbered series, and one of the more obscure games in that series. It's designed by Karsten Hartwig of Chinatown fame. It's actually one of only 3 published games from the thoughtful designer. This game wasn't on my radar at all, and in fact I wasn't even aware of its existence until I saw it on the BGG-Con Virtual Flea Market Geek List. I recognized the cover as part of the Alea numbered series, and since I have yet to be disappointed by any game in the series, and since it was just a few bucks to pick up, I decided to take a chance on it. Well, the Aliyah numbered series continues its positive streak for me with Augsburg. Here's how it works. Players follow in the footsteps of the historical figure Jacob Fugger, who was known as Jacob the Rich and one of the wealthiest men in the world in his time. He became very influential by extending loans to the European nobility in exchange for titles and positions. This is thematically represented in the game by 5 nobles, who have matching numbered cards and a deck of auction cards. Each round, players will bid on each noble's favor in turn by bidding a certain quantity of matching noble cards. The actions are conducted poker style, meaning each subsequent player can either fold, call, or raise the stakes. If several players call, then players will reveal their bid cards, and the player at the highest single quantity value of a bid card, they are all unique, wins the auction and gets to select a privilege card from the display. Outbid players who match the quantity bid get a consolation and guilders. But the privilege cards are truly desirable and feature a unique combination of 3 privileges, which enable a player to customize their player board and increase the amount of various types of income they receive at the end of the round. Income comes in 3 varieties: points, auction cards, and the guilders needed to purchase the auction cards players choose to keep. There's a delicate balance to these 3 types of income, and players don't want to get too far ahead on any one of the income tracks at the expense of the others. In addition, timing is important, as the income tiles players accumulate through their privilege rewards are not first come first serve. Rather, the higher level tiles are stolen by players who reach that particular level later. But in order to progress past certain spots on the victory point tracks, players must have developed certain parts of their player board and reach certain levels of particular income tracks first. I was very impressed with this game. At first, as is a danger of many auction games, I was afraid there might be a runaway leader problem, but I found that players who lost early auctions won later ones more easily, and without having to grant consolation prizes in the process. In addition, the victory point track limitations kept early risers in check, and the ingenious method of awarding better tiles to the players who reached those levels later added a tactical aspect that is not often seen in auction games. This makes Augsburg 1520 feel completely unique in a crowded field of auction games, and makes it feel like a fresh novel experience despite its age, an admirable achievement. Auction games usually have an advantage of keeping all the players engaged from start to finish with little or no downtime, and Augsburg 1520 is no exception. In addition, the brisk pace, short number of rounds, and tactical auction experience creates a tension level that rises over time instead of declines, as is sometimes the case in auction games. I've also found that the outcome of the game is never certain, and the final result is a complete surprise as the final set of auctions take place. I've observed only close point spreads of victories feel like they've been genuinely earned instead of being the result of chance. I really like this game, and it goes in my short list of recommended auction games and obscure games to show people when the opportunity arises. This episode of the podcast, I'm going to continue my review of 2019 with a countdown of my top 10 new-to-me games that weren't published in 2019. These games span the gamut of still fairly newer games to games that have been around for quite a while. Number 10, Die Osterinsel. I featured this game earlier in the year on an obscure Bryce game segment, a former Spiel des Jahres recommended title that caught my eye because of the Easter Island theme. This game turned out to have tremendous table presence, completely unique mechanics, and a ridiculous amount of fun. Number 9, Legacy of Dragonholt. Maybe I'm too harsh of a literary critic, but there are a few games where the story actually drags me into the game. Legacy of Dragonholt is one of those handful of games. The story is the game, and it worked. I really enjoyed getting immersed in this one. Number 8, Twice as Clever. This wound up being my most played game of the year, which makes sense considering Ganz Clever claimed that honor last year. Twice as Clever lives up to its name. My wife doesn't like it as much as Ganz Clever, so I've mostly been enjoying this one solo. Number 7, Symphony No. 9. I haven't been impressed by too many stock games over the years, but I seem to be attracted to the more unique ones, and Symphony No. 9's use of the mechanic is certainly that. The way the stocks mirror the popularity of the composers over the course of their lifetime is ingenious and engaging. Number 6, Karoo. This game is just sheer fun. I will never get tired of launching dice with catapults. That this has gone down as my most positive Kickstarter experience ever is just icing